interesting article from Quartz, and you'll find many out there on the internet like this from sources like Zero Hedge. Here's what's really scary about China overtaking America as the world's biggest economy. Does size matter? Indeed. Well, let's take a look here, because basically what the article is referring to is that China has become the #1 economy in the world, and this is something that I've been saying a couple of years back, because the black market in China is so huge and it's impossible to calculate. So that is one area that leads us to believe that China has been the biggest economy, at least for a few years now. What happened is the IMF adjusted for calculating the actual purchasing power of Chinese compared to their Western counterparts, and when they put in these new adjustments, what they found is that China has taken the lead. And this is because, of course, Chinese have lower overhead, they have less taxes, they have less costs than their same demographic in the West. So one finance professor at Peking University explains that it's not exactly apples to apples comparison, because obviously one is a command control economy and the other one has to basically borrow its money from the Fed. So China has a ton of debt, US has a ton of debt. Now it's estimated here by the Bank of Governors of the Federal Reserve System that US debt is rated around 60 trillion or so, but I would argue that it is actually closer to 100 trillion when you take into account all the unfunded liabilities with no means to pay them off. As you know, employment is down in America, taxes are higher, expenses are higher, so how is it possible to pay down that debt? Now what China does is they calculate their debt a different way. They assume that it's going to be paid off. So when they calculate GDP and their debt to GDP ratio, they don't even take into consideration how they're going to pay it off. And that's troubling. Here's worthless investment in China, and this is key right here. 15 trillion yuan estimated worthless investment in China. I've been talking about this for years. Trains and bridges and airports and roads to nowhere, ghost malls and ghost housing complexes. That's happening right before my eyes here. That is from The Economist. Now, what's more than likely is that China will go the route that Japan took over the last 2 decades. And what it's going to try to do is absorb the price of the waste into its own balance sheet and basically write it off. And that's scary, because we're worried about inflation here, and we're worried about people defaulting on their loans. And earlier this month I reported that the banks are increasing reserve requirements and injecting more stimulus into their economy. So China's getting there faster than the US did in terms of their debt when you compare it to growth. So you could say that the Chinese economy is even less efficient than the United States, and in a shorter amount of time they're accumulating more debt for their GDP gains than what the United States did for their GDP gains over the past several decades. So we know that both nations cook the books, and if we ever got a glance at the real books, we would find that the problems are even deeper than what we know. So basically that's how it is. It looks bleak, and it looks like there's going to be continued bridges to nowhere and housing complexes that are empty, and tearing down and rebuilding of stuff in China to keep the economy tip top. And in America, we'll see more financial shenanigans to keep America's growth, at least on paper, to where they want to get it. And we'll keep a close eye on this as the quarters advance.